Right. Okay, so we're almost done today. And the way this shakes out is that somebody allowed to masquerade that intelligence was somehow connected to prostitution. And that engaging acts of prostitution, including when it came to retirement or pension benefits, after you did time on the clock and got credit for all of the acts of prostitution you engaged under the auspices of working, including a secretary or in some sort of administrative position, somebody allowed for a misrepresentation that prostitution was a form of intelligence. And then people, including members of political office, got themselves on the intelligence committee so they could obligate other people to engage acts of prostitution for their financial benefit. And then you set up this system where right now we're at a point where people have retired, and because of their loyalty to the system of prostitution while they were gainfully employed or of employable age, they're expecting to be availed of the proceeds of prostitution. And in the meantime, you've created an entire political strata within the United States that somehow saw prostitution as a political right, and you abrogated actual constitutional process around appropriations and accountability for appropriations and tax policy to allow the Federal Reserve to try to economically engineer people, including in connection with alleged health care treatment, to actually be biophysiologically and cybernetically enhanced to engage in more profitable forms of prostitution, including prostitution without even needing another person present, right? And then you want to try to call that your energy paradigm. And you want to try to allow for it to make some sort of relationship either in connection with nuclear energy or gas and oil so that you can allow people to characterize it under the Department of State. And here's the thing, even if you believe that prostitution is legitimate employment, and that actually engaging in sex acts and receiving actual financial compensation or using sex acts as a form of service that can get you some sort of credit or some sort of acknowledgement, it's still illegal. It's still exploitative. Why? Because you do not actually literally obtain consent. You do not actually have official contract terms. You do not actually acknowledge the identity of the people that are both the originators as well as the recipients, not to mention any sort of relay in connection with the means by which prostitution and proceeds from prostitution are able to be circulated into and through the economy. And you absolutely, I understand, did it this way because you had every intention of engaging acts of prostitution with minors and conditioning and training people as minors to be normalized to having the exploitation of their sexual energy commercialized without any expectation that they would be acknowledged or compensated themselves, helping to raise a generation or two to be completely alienated from their own sexualities so that other people can use and manipulate their sexualities for their own gain, including political gain. And in the meantime, I believe you allowed this to infiltrate the military. And you set a policy where women in the military and service to your country was predicated upon certain kinds of prostitution of both women and men. And that's why only certain people were allowed to even have access to members of the military to have conversations with, or in processes of securing military assets. And instead, you want us to go play some sort of little virtual board game with people that think that they're covered by the Department of State. And so what we have now is a situation where you have people literally engaging in illicit finance under the cover of being intelligence, including members of Congress and including members of the Senate. And it's unsustainable. And my understanding is it's completely hideous that what you created in your virtual prostitution paradigm is not even pleasurable. And even if you try to take your digital prostitution network scheme and use it under the auspices that it's some sort of fintech as part of a global digital currency economy, it's disgusting. They don't like it. And not only do they not like it, but The truth of the matter is, because of the deceit and fraud in which it was engaged, and the fact that a lot of it was predicated upon sexually shaming other groups of people that you wanted to sexually colonize so that you could downgrade them and try to subordinate them to people who had no intention of being held accountable for their profligacy. Well, now it's a disaster. And it's a disaster you can't even catastrophe bond and try to swap out or try to leverage. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, that's what I'm hearing. And so what I can say is that there are people that are capable of actually maintaining the kind of presence and the kind of mentality and the kind of state of readiness necessary to actually have a standing army, or to actually step up into the role of, I don't know, a citizen militia if necessary, or to even engage in law enforcement activities that would be appropriate, like going after white-collar crime, like prosecuting public corruption, like protecting the people, including vulnerable people, from exploitation by city bureaucrats and or even people abusing their previous experience or even family connections with members of political office in order to get away with crime. It's absolutely possible. And that's what we need, and that's who we are. So everything that seeks to obstruct that is just part of an edifice that's already crumbling. And I have absolutely no intention of investing myself or my people into your ruse of an infrastructure paradigm. You're not trying to actually invest in infrastructure. What you're trying to do is find a way to launder money through contracting with and through the government and in illegal underwriting schemes. You're trying to launder our money, which is actually quite abundant, to pay off bad deals you have not been able to cover yourself for apparently over 35 years. See, 35 years was plenty of time for you to traffic me since I was a little girl, and then finally get the fuck off my accounts and my life. So in this time where you seized my account and put an illegal lien on me just because you could, I would have actually had somebody else step up and into my life to have a conversation with. But that's how broke you are. And that's how completely unjustified what you did was. So you either have to acknowledge that you've literally killed me, and you've killed your own children, and you've killed your own grandchildren. Because the only thing, after even 35 years of good girl service you can expect, is how many more years? How many more years did you want to use this bullshit infrastructure paradigm to bond your own people to in order to cover up for what you still have not been able to pay off? You had 35 years to get this correct. You apparently could not do it in 35 years. Why should we give you another one? And why should we give you another generation of young people to harvest? We're 35 years in debt because of this. 35 entire years have been wasted because you never held accountable the people you needed to 35 years ago. We're still paying on shit you didn't pay for 35 years ago. No. This is not you're not doing anything related to infrastructure. You're not doing anything related to retirement. You're certainly not doing anything related to pensions. Why? How many women right now are drawing on pensions for themselves, not brokered through their father, not brokered through their husband, not brokered through some other man that's allowed to be their risk representative? How many women in the United States draw their own pension? How many women in the United States have their own mortgage? Yeah, you don't have any infrastructure. You didn't support your own infrastructure. You've got nothing to invest. You were the ones that systematically wanted to make a ritual out of stripping and shaming and humiliating your own women. You don't have the material preconditions for the economy necessary to develop the kind of infrastructure that we would need. You know what that means? We're going to have to mate with foreign men. Your American men are infertile. They allowed themselves to be neutered when they watched you for 35 years turn women into nothing more than vessels of prostitution. We don't have the money. We don't have the capacity to make the money because you wouldn't let us. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You had my accounts as long as you did. And at the end of the day, what you've got is an infertile, not even 10-year-old girl. You honestly cannot produce or reproduce when you're trying to engage a sex economy with people that are not old enough to produce sex hormones to procreate. That's what you've proven. 35 years of primary education. Congratulations.